Welcome to Politically Basic. I'm your host, Kyle Campbell. As we always do, we're breaking down the basics of all political issues and current political events so that you get to decide. It's a Newsom Nonsense day, so it's a great day to love our beautiful state of California and talk about how to save her. Helping me do it today, I've got on the show the amazing Parisian-born Jewish beauty, LA to Dallas country crisscrosser, politics-loving, real estate expert based in Malibu, Liz Benichou. You'll remember she exploded on the cultural scene when she wore a MAGA hat to Erewhon in Southern California a few days after Trump's re-election in November of 2024 and shocked the nation with the response that she got. Liz, you and I got to meet in person a couple of AmFests ago, even though we live very close to each other, or we used to. But I'm very glad to have you on the show today. Let's round up some Newsom nonsense together. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, let's just kick it right off. Why commentate on politics? How did you get into this space?
You know, against everyone's, will and efforts to have me not say anything, I couldn't help myself. I saw what was going on in California. I grew up in LA, I grew up in Beverly Hills. I lived in Malibu for 9 years. I've been through 2 fires in Malibu between the Woolsey fire in 2018 and the Palisades fire. And just to see the deterioration of Los Angeles throughout the years, I couldn't help but speak out. And I think politics is very important, and people try to kind of brush it off, put it under the rug, say, oh, it's okay, we can't control anything. But we really can, and we really are very powerful with our voices. And I think it was just time for me to, against everyone's advice, say something.
Yeah, well, we're glad that you did. I mean, having an LA perspective, and especially with regard to fires, right? I'm just a little bit north of Malibu, north of LA. We have lived through so many, and there's nothing like experiencing it to be able to help people across the country understand why it's such a big deal here in the state of California when it comes to political governance and our leadership, how they are handling resource management and fire and water and brush cleanup, and they're expensive. And so it matters on a lot of different fronts other than just, surviving and getting out. And so your perspective is a really important one. I'm glad that you're speaking out. You left LA though. I think that it's important for people who don't live in the LA area or understand it, or they've never had a stint there, maybe for school or otherwise. It gets a bad rap, but it's a pretty beautiful, wonderful, historic place. Was that tough to leave, and what caused that move to Texas for you?
There were a lot of different factors. Of course, it was hard to leave. It's the only place I've ever really lived, aside from going to visit my dad in France twice a year. California has always been home, and it's always felt like home. I always wanted to come back to it. And when I made the decision a little over a year ago to move to Dallas, a place that I had never been to, because I wanted a shot at a real life. I'm single right now, so I wanted to meet somebody with similar values. It's very hard to find that in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are some conservative people. I'm like, okay, well, I can either go to Florida or I can go to Texas. I was not called to Florida. I just kind of had this feeling that Dallas is where I needed to be. And also in terms of owning something, just general lifestyle, it is so much easier to be here. It is more affordable, housing is more attainable, and everyone is genuinely very nice and very friendly. And that makes a huge difference because, as you know, Los Angeles can be very friendly, but it's not always genuine. And I wanted to be surrounded by good people.
Yeah, LA can be friendly towards certain groups, I would say, and maybe not so hospitable to other groups. But you had a surprising encounter and response to that, when typically being conservative in the state of California is a challenge. I would say before 2016, and even really before 2024, when Trump won his second term, We would always joke about whispering to other people when you would talk about your political affiliation or alignment, right? And if someone was conservative, they'd get really close to you and say, I'm a conservative. And then you would be so relieved if somebody was saying the same thing that you were. And people kind of skulked around in shadows, with their conservatism. You wore a MAGA hat to Erewhon. Now, can I ask you, were you in the Calabasas one?
I was.
That's my favorite Erewhon.
It's the best Erewhon.
Yeah, hands down.
I think we should do a video ranking the Erewhons.
Yeah. That
is by far, the aisles are big, the parking is good. Everyone that works there is just so friendly. And it's Beverly Hills Erewhon is a scene.
It is. I think you actually see more celebrities at the Calabasas one because they have sort of left Beverly Hills a little bit and gone into those nice kind of canyon, more mountain communities a little bit to seek refuge. You're right. That is hands down the best Erewhon. And what happened? Tell us about how you ended up making that video and the response that you got when you did that.
I had just really started speaking up on my little page that had 186 followers at the time. And I was like, I am so sick and tired of hiding the fact that I love Trump. So I went in with my MAGA hat on, went and just went to the hot bar. Every single person, aside from maybe one or two people who gave me a weird look, but they dare not say a word, everyone else, they were literally giving me high fives, telling me, I love your hat. I'm so happy. Everyone was so excited. And it was just a very natural, organic moment. I sat down with my food. I had a giant zit on my face. I was like, whatever. I just spoke to the camera and I said, this is what's going on. And now we're seeing the shift because I would have been afraid to wear the MAGA hat, 4 years ago and 8 years ago especially, even though I always voted for Trump. It was my third Trump vote and I'm so proud to have done it. And the online reaction, I had never experienced going viral before. I was like, wow, this video, it's got 4,000 views within a few hours. That's a little weird. My friend was like, you're going to have 1 million. I was like, nah. And then the next morning and I was like, oh, okay, this is something. Yeah. And positive reaction, except for the few people who told me that I should get raped.
Great. Good. Thank you.
The tolerant left.
Noted. What? It's funny. I saw it and actually people sent that video to me and I was like, I know her. She's so cool. She's so chill. And I loved seeing you in that moment because, it was kind of symbolic in the sense that it was right after the 24 election. And I think that video actually became one of those symbolic moments for the right, for MAGA Republicans to say, look, this was the thing that we would do to try to stand ground, it was sort of like that come at me, bro symbol prior to that. People were getting screamed at, harassed. Some people were getting attacked for simply putting that hat on. It represented something that was highly upsetting to other people who opposed Donald Trump. And in that moment, there was a real seismic shift, I think, in the cultural response to that as a symbol itself. And so you were really brave to do it. I think that you did it with a lot of genuine nature and intention behind it. And the response was fantastic. So I'm thrilled to see that you have had not just the response, but that growth, because people do want to hear from you. You commentate on just about any political or kind of current event, because I always say everything is political, but you're really out there. I mean, do you feel that now you have kind of become in your own right sort of a political generalist?
I guess so. Yeah, I try to comment on anything that I really understand and know. There are certain things where I'm like, well, I really don't know much about that, so I'm gonna stay away from that exact topic. Like, I can't commentate on crypto or anything of that nature.
No one can, Liz. It's okay.
Do not come to me for financial advice. But I try to learn as much as possible and stay on top of everything. And it's just, I think it's really exciting. And being in the real estate industry, you're always told to keep your politics to yourself because you're going to lose clients. I've actually had the opposite. I've had clients come from this and friendships come out of this. And it's been really, really just refreshing.
Yeah. Well, politics should be that thing that you can align on, similar to, faith or your views on other things. And I do think we're getting back to that a little bit. But one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show was because you kind of have this really unique and interesting blend of professional experience, personal experience, upbringing, your nationality, your faith background is sort of like this weird, perfect storm of things that gives you a great perspective. And one of those things I really want to talk to you about, because this is a Newsom Nonsense episode, is you are a fires in California expert at this point, and that's a sad thing to have to add to the resume. But you've lived through some, and now, of course, most recently, I mean, you were there still in the Malibu area for this Palisades and Eaton fire. Where do things stand today post Palisades fire? What's the update on what's going on about a year after that happened?
So in the Palisades specifically, over 6,800 homes burned down. I think they have about 2,000 permits that have been issued, which is a lot better than the Woolsey fire. I mean, that, I don't even want to talk about that one. But when you're in the Coastal Commission, and Palisades, not all of it's in Coastal Commission, but a lot of it is, you're going to have issues. It's typical California bureaucracy making it almost impossible to get anything done. So I think it's about, oh my God, there haven't been that many homes that have been rebuilt. And there's only like a few people that are living there. And a lot of people, like myself, decided, hey, enough is enough. I don't want to live in a place where if my home burns down, I can't even rebuild without jumping through 15 different hoops. So, I mean, it's going to be a long process for the Palisades. For example, I keep bringing up the Woolsey fire, but I think it really does relate to this in a lot of ways, because you could see Woolsey fire was in Malibu, and then Palisades fire that affected Malibu and Palisades. So over 400 homes burned down in the Woolsey fire, and only, I think it's been less than 70 homes have been rebuilt, and that happened in 2018.
Right.
So just to give some sort of perspective, this isn't going to be a short process. This is going to be 7 to 10 years, in my opinion.
There's so many issues around this. Even acquiring fire insurance here in the state of California is almost nearly impossible. And it got to the point where the state option was the only, state-provided insurance option was the only option available to California homeowners. And you had to have it in order to fulfill a mortgage obtaining process.
Yeah.
And people were really stuck. I mean, we've been stuck for a long time. And then after this fire, there was a lot of discussion about those insurance companies who were already fleeing the state because it made no sense for them to insure homes that were in more danger of burning down because of state policies around clearing brush and filling reservoirs and giving fire departments in these huge counties the resources and the funding and the ability to be ready to fight these fires. And so again, we talk about, everything coming together in to make one of the worst possible situations, but insurance is a part of that. And we had a fire here, similar time frame. I want to say it was maybe January of 2019 was the Thomas fire here. At the time, it was either one of the largest or the biggest fires in California. It was a total nightmare. It affected just so many people. And then we had the mudslides afterwards. I mean, talk about just an unimaginable nightmare of a disaster. Again, same situation almost to Palisades. A couple of dozen people lost their lives, including children, and they were pulling babies from the mud. I mean, it was just horrific. But again, watching that process and living that process of people trying to rebuild and the state being so restrictive and insurance not coming through or just taking forever, it it really affects your hopefulness of being able to make it in a state like this. How much should we be realistically laying this at the feet of the governor? Or was it right that the LA Fire Department chief be fired? Should Karen Bass have resigned, been impeached, stepped down, fired? How do we slice this pie of responsibility here? And because it does seem that Governor Newsom has just sort of washed his hands of it and said, oh, we're doing great, we're working so hard, and that's a problem for those people down there in LA and Pacific Palisades to deal with.
I think everyone should be fired. That's why I think Karen Bass should have resigned. I think Newsom should have resigned. I think that every single person involved should have been gone after this, because Newsom prioritized little fish, little endangered fish, $100 million to prevent California from getting water so that these tiny fish could have a shot, instead of thinking about the tax-paying citizens of California. And then you have Karen Bass, who prioritized DEI over actual fire safety. It is known that California is a high fire state. California always burns. Malibu always burns. So this is something that we need to keep in mind when we are electing people. It's not about the DEI policies. It's not about saving fish or saving a certain tree. It's about saving lives and people's homes. Because at the end of the day, we are the taxpayers. We are the people who are essentially paying Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, and they're not working for us at this point. They are working for themselves. The reservoirs should have been filled. They are still not filled to this day. One of my favorite accounts is watching Spencer Pratt because he is so on top of everything. And I'm just going to get to him in a second, but I think he would make an amazing mayor of Los Angeles. But seeing the fact that the reservoirs are still not filled, the fact that the fire hydrants were not filled, and that all of these insurance companies backed out of California because of the policies, because of Gavin Newsom. So I think that the fact that when Karen Bass landed from her trip, did not say a word, had the most sociopathic look on her face after what had happened to the people in the Palisades, people in Altadena. I mean, I think it was, over like 16,000 structures had been destroyed between Palisades and Eden Fire. She should not be in office. She should not be in charge of her own schedule in life. She shouldn't be in charge of anything. So
I agree. I'm going to agree. Yeah, no, those are good thoughts. And I think that you represent the thought process and the opinions of many millions of people in the state. And I want to do a little debunking here, or maybe I just want to play devil's advocate, because there are some people who want to counter this and say, well, it's not Gavin Newsom's fault that California has a lot of fires, or it's not Gavin Newsom's fault that there was bad leadership in LA County, or, it's not his fault. But you get to a point where you run out of it's not his fault. The next thing I could say, well, it does land at his feet. It is his responsibility. I think for people who are questioning the legitimacy of these things that we're talking about, I just want to back you up right now. And I have done a lot of water research over the last few years. There are lawsuits that have just been going on for, honestly, now at this point, decades, over the release of water in the state of California into the ocean, the release of water that is not used for agriculture. It is not used for filling these reservoirs. We are not putting resources into dredging these big spaces that are meant to hold water to handle these fires and natural disasters. And so when you do look at the entire landscape, I mean, we could talk for hours today. We don't have hours, but truly, when you start to research and dig in, it will back up everything that you are saying, and people know it. And I think what is bothering everyone so deeply here is Gavin Newsom's response. And I know that we got sick of hearing this term over the last couple of years, but he is gaslighting the people of California and the people across the country, because he for as many times as he has said, I'm not running for president, he is absolutely 100%, of course, running for president. And it's terribly infuriating for people here who are continuing to pay taxes to watch Spencer Pratt walk himself to the edge of the reservoir that should absolutely have been filled even from this record rainfall we just experienced in this state, and see it empty, and those fire rigs that are still broken down that have not been addressed, and the number of things that went wrong that to this day, a year later, haven't been fixed, haven't been addressed, yet Karen Bass remains in office, Gavin Newsom remains in office, and they're telling the people of this great state, everything's fine, not my fault. And it just really, boy, it does what they're accomplishing. It makes it harder for people to fight against. And so this will just continue, and the news cycle will refresh and people will get distracted. But really, truly, the only way to fix this is to get different leadership, because the policies and the work that they've done is so kind of entrenched within the Democrat Party here in the state. And that, of course, has implications of things that we can talk about as well. But thank you for that update. I have a friend who's rebuilding in the Palisades. It is just painfully, horrifically slow. And I believe the one house that was completed had been permitted previous to the fire. And so they were kind of looking at that house sitting there saying, look, there's a house that's gone up. And it's like, yes, it received its permit prior to the fire. So we will continue to hold people accountable. But talking about real estate, and now this is your area of expertise, specifically in Southern California, what would you say is happening, across the state? Do you think with everything that influences housing, affordability, cost of living, insurance, all of these different things, cost of water, is it feasible for anyone to make a go of it here today in the state of California?
It is, if you're wealthy. It's very hard for someone such as myself, who I am in my 30s, single at the moment. I would not be able to afford a place in a decent neighborhood in California without worrying or stress. Mm-hmm. It would be very difficult. And honestly, at the same time, would it even be worth it? I don't think so. I think there's way too much risk in California. It is the most beautiful state on the planet. It's probably one of the most beautiful pieces of land that we have on Earth. But what it's become, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth the stress, the financial burden. So it is possible. Most of my friends who are homeowners in California, they've had a lot of help from their parents. Mm-hmm. They come from very affluent families. So yes, if you're lucky enough, go for it. But at the same time, everyone that I have spoken to who has moved out of California to states like Texas or Florida, none of us miss it. And that to me is so heartbreaking, because a place that I would miss so much, and every time I went back, I was so happy. Now when I go back, I'm like, I cannot wait to get back to Texas.
Wow.
I never thought I would say that.
I'm really actually surprised to hear you say it, because you're such a California girl. I am too. I go places all the time, and we come back. I say it almost every day. I say it to my kids all the time. We're so blessed we get to live here. Look at it. It's just like, it's heaven on earth. It's paradise. And no matter where we go, we'll always come back and be so excited to come home. But I'm surprised to hear you say that. But at the same time, this is the direction that the state is heading, and it's sad. And one of the comments that I will get quite often when I'm posting about the difficulties here in this state and why we fight for it, because we do love it. It's our home. You don't want to be run off from the place you call home. It means so much to you. And you have history here, and a lot of us have family history. My kids are 5th generation in the place that we live now. For Californians, that's a big deal. This isn't an East Coast thing where we came over, on the Mayflower. So it's, it means a lot to us. We don't want to have to give that up. But the commentary that I will get frequently is, why don't you just leave? If you are so disappointed with the leadership, with the way things are going, if it's so expensive, why do you stay? And my response to that often does not have to do with me necessarily. It has to do with the millions and millions of people who live here who cannot afford to leave, who don't have the option of moving even within their own community or moving to a more affordable community within the state. This state's huge. We've got something like 800 miles of north to south coastland. I mean, there are plenty of communities that vary in the cost of living, but it is so restrictive. The regulations, the taxes, good Lord, the taxes in this state. They'll tax you for breathing. They'll tax you for the mileage that you drive. They now want to actually tax you if you have left California. I don't know if you saw that one, Liz, but you better start getting your paperwork and your receipts together, because they're sending out letters saying, you have moved. We want to tax you further as an exit tax. And so I think it's important that people hear from you on this, because you have done it. You have just lived it this last year. It's not always feasible for people.
Yeah, which I totally understand. It was easy for me. I don't have kids. I'm single. I work in real estate, so it's an industry that I could easily go get a license in a different state. I am very lucky to have been able to make this move. And if I ever want to go back, I know it's always an option. I have family there. I can always go back. And that was kind of my mindset going into it. But if you have kids, if you are married, if you have a job that you need to be in California for, I understand that is difficult, and moving is so expensive. And it's hard to move to a place where you don't know anyone, which is what I did. Did not know a single person here, and restart your entire life. It was a very scary decision. And I think a lot of people and a lot of friends of mine who are in a similar position that I'm in, who get to kind of work from home or work from wherever, they want to make the move, but there are certain things that Southern California, or California in general, offers that other states don't. I miss Erewhon. It's a very silly example, but it was kind of like a learning curve with the health and wellness stuff here.
Yeah, right.
Into health and wellness, and they're not in Texas. But there are certain things that you kind of weigh the pros and cons, and you have to, if you really want to have a shot at a better life, and I'm telling you that maybe the general lifestyle isn't better. You can't just go to the beach or go to the mountains or have all of that at the tip of your fingers. But in a place like Texas, another reason I chose it is because I'm like 2.5-hour flight away from anything.
Yeah.
I can be in California in 2.5 hours. I can be in Florida in 2.5 hours, anywhere in the country. So there are pros and cons. If it's something I suggest for people who are single, young, and want to have a good life and a good family and meet people with similar values, get out of California. There are people who have similar values, but very far and few in between. And it's a place, especially Los Angeles, where sadly, and I hate saying this, a lot of people don't have values at all. And
Why do you think
that? Because I grew up there.
Why do you think that's changed?
I think it's always been that way. I just think that it's more, I think people are more open about it now. And I think it's, to me, a culture shock moving here was seeing everyone going to church on Sundays. I'm Jewish. I grew up in Beverly Hills, very Jewish neighborhood, and all my Jewish friends, they would go to synagogue. So I was used to that. But I never really saw people get dressed up and go to church. And my first weekend here, I was with one of my friends who I'd made, and I was like, wow, where's everyone going dressed up so nice? And he's like, church.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, people actually do this. This is like a real thing. And I know that sounds so dumb and so silly, but it does show you that people, they have good family values. And I'm like, that's really lacking in Los Angeles, because especially in Los Angeles, it's more of Who do you know? Oh, what can you help me with? Oh, you're friends with that celebrity? Then, okay, we can be friends.
Yeah, you're right. It's become very transactional. And a lot of people who are coming from international destinations are living there part-time. And I think the families did kind of start to go to the outer lying communities, and it's just a different crowd with different priorities, let's say, there. So I don't think that's silly at all to be surprised by seeing everyone go to church on Sunday in Texas. I think it's probably what happens mostly around the country on Sundays, and businesses are closed and people do prioritize that. We just don't see it here that often. So it sounds really refreshing and it sounds amazing. I'm glad that you get to experience that.
Yeah, it's been great.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. One of the big complaints that we're having right now is what's being done with our tax dollars here in the state. And I mentioned taxes a minute ago and how just unimaginably burdensome they are, and that you have to be a wealthy person. We have started to dig in now to answer some of these questions we've had for years, which is, why are we paying so much in taxes? Where are these billions and billions of dollars going? And when Gavin Newsom took office, he started making promises to build a high-speed train that would go up the center of the state, which we need. We actually need that. I think taxpayers were okay with paying a little bit more to achieve something that they would utilize and would benefit them and make their lives better and more convenient. He promised to solve the homelessness crisis. He promised to address climate issues, whether you believe that that is necessary or not. And a number of other things, low-income housing, affordable housing, our education system, all kinds of things. Each and every one of those things has seen tremendous plummeting numbers, not in the good way. Money that has seemed to go into the ether while those certain problems and issues increase. Homelessness has increased tremendously. You only need to drive pretty much anywhere in the LA area to see it with your own eyes. It's devastating and heartbreaking. And we're talking tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars. Now, Nick Shirley is everyone's hero right now, going and simply knocking on doors in Minneapolis to see what's really going on, where this money has gone. And now we have people doing it here in the state of California. I want to put this article in front of you here. This was from about a month ago. The DOJ accuses real estate developers of $50 million fraud. This is just one area where money is being taken in to address one of these issues that we have, and it's being diverted, sometimes through NGOs, this time through real estate developers. Again, this is kind of your world, and I'm sure you heard about this, where $24 billion was designated for homelessness, and the Department of Justice is just trying to figure out this trail, and it looks like housing projects were supposed to be built. Some land and projects changed hands, sometimes from literally one day to the next calendar day, in something being purchased for $2 million and sold for $11 million the next day. Do you believe that this is happening, and how rampant do you think this is happening, especially when it comes to real estate development and this housing that is supposed to be built to address the issues of homelessness?
I mean, I definitely believe that there is tremendous fraud in California. I think that what we're seeing in Minnesota is like a little anthill compared to what we have in California. We have so much real estate in California and so much land that is either being used or not used. And so it would make it very easy to pull off some sort of fraud like this, and think that they're pulling it off, but eventually everything always comes out in the open. $24 billion for the homeless. The homeless crisis has gotten so much worse since Newsom's been in office. Where is all of that money going? Also, the fire aid money. Where did all of that go? It was like $100 million in fire aid. We don't know where any of that went. And then you mentioned the railroad.
High-speed rail, I think is what we call it. Slowest high-speed railed ever.
It's been what, 20 years almost?
That's not even true. It doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere.
It goes backwards, actually. It goes in reverse.
They haven't even built like one track or anything. So there is so much fraud. We don't know where any of this money is going. Newsom seems to becoming wealthier and wealthier by the day. And I know his salary doesn't equate to his lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So there are definitely some questions there. And yeah, there's going to be a lot that's going to be coming out in California. And I think that we need to get ahead of this as soon as possible because, as we mentioned earlier, Newsom's definitely running for president in 2028. And we need to expose him for the sleazeball that he is, because even people who have experienced losing their homes and everything that they've gone through in California might still vote for Gavin Newsom for president.
Right.
So we need to really expose him and his corruption, because I think we're just really getting to like the surface level of it right now.
I think you're exactly right. And that's a really important thing to kind of stop and talk about just for 1 second, if you will indulge me for a minute. Because I've been hearing people just get to the forefront of making this argument that it doesn't matter what Gavin Newsom has done. He won't own up to it. He'll run for president. They'll stick the D next to his name. And every single person who hates Donald Trump in this country will vote for whoever is on the Democrat ticket, regardless of what that person has done. And I think it's important in this effort, in having conversations with people just like you, Liz, about the reality of living under Gavin Newsom leadership and how it can be, honestly, personally, life-ruining. I think that is the most important thing to share with people. Do you want this for our entire nation? He's taken a state that had billions in surplus, that was actually doing okay. Not phenomenal, but we were doing okay before he came along. And he has just run us so profoundly into the ground. The only way that we are going to even start to expose some of this is with different leadership. Now, thankfully, he's terming out, but we have some serious contenders. And I've never seen Republican candidates, maybe not since Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had his own, he was a celebrity, and so he came with his own cachet and interest for people to vote for him. I've never seen enthusiasm for Republican candidates for governor here like I have this term for 26 in our election. I'm highly interested to see what happens. But you're right, people are still going to vote for this guy, and people like him. He's actually not the worst that's out there. And I know that's probably disturbing for some people to hear, but it's still valuable to talk about what's happened, because this will happen on a national scale. What I and many people believe he has done over these very short and super destructive 5 years. It's only been 5 years, really, that he's been in office. 6, actually. In that short time, he has taken federal dollars, state tax dollars, any money he can get. Every time he declares an emergency, a state emergency, he gets money. And he's taken that money and he stuffed it in every little nook and cranny with his friends, with unions that will kick back to his campaigns and others. And he's hidden it, and then he's passed regulations and policy to hide that. And you'll read these articles, and it's like, well, they don't have the information to share. We just had an audit. We just had that state audit that now is highlighting 8 or 9 critical agencies and saying, hey, by the way, also, we didn't even get what we asked you for last year in last year's audit. So there's insulating the fraud and insulating the corruption. And I made a joke the other day on another show, I can only imagine the number of burn bags that are sitting around the Capitol building for if a Republican does manage to get into office. So we're in kind of a dire do or die situation here in the state, I think. And we'll see what happens there. But I want to bring it back to LA specific. You mentioned Spencer Pratt. God bless him, from the hills to the seat in the mayor's office in LA. Maybe that will happen. He had a bit of an odd start to this campaign But when you start to look at who he is, what his education and experience is, he's a really bright guy. And no one has even approached him in his motivation to expose what's happened after the Palisades fire. He is truly passionate about fixing things. And Karen Bass seems completely unaffected and unbothered by all of this. So what's your take on the mayoral race in LA that's coming up?
I think right now we're finally living in a time where people are sick and tired of career politicians, and they're open. I mean, obviously it did start with Arnold, as you mentioned. He was an actor and then became governor. But I think now we're really at a point where we're seeing how these career politicians only care about themselves. And when you get somebody like Donald Trump or Spencer Pratt, who truly cares about the people instead of just themselves, because you could see it. Spencer Pratt is passionate about what's happening in Los Angeles. He truly cares, and he's able to bring Democrats and Republicans together, because it doesn't matter at this point whether you're a hardcore Democrat or a hardcore Republican. You're an Angelino, and Angelinos deserve to get what they're paying for, because they are paying a lot to be Angelinos. And they deserve a mayor who is going to stand up for them, who's going to put in the work and the efforts and do the research. And Spencer Pratt is doing that. He is exposing so much corruption, so much nonsense. He is nonstop. I mean, the guy, say what you want about him. He is passionate. He is driven. He is a smart person. And I've been lucky enough to meet him a couple of times and spend some time with him. He is a very kind human being as well. Karen Bass, you said she doesn't really seem to, she doesn't care. She's never cared. She cares about herself. That is the only thing. And honestly, I don't even think she's doing a good job at caring about herself.
It's become a grift, right? 100%. Certain people groomed and brought up to fill certain positions and toe party lines and, not make any decisions that are outside of the talking point sheet. And yeah, she has just been so detrimental. I saw Tish Hyman has entered the race also. So we've got an interesting matchup on our hands. But more than anything, I'm glad to see the light of day shown on these issues and what's been done, because it's been a year. You can accomplish a lot in a year. Look at what Donald Trump has just accomplished, and they just did 365 wins in 365 days. No legacy media outlet covered it, so you might not have heard about it. But you can do a lot, and she is kind of at a net negative position here, right? Where we almost need someone to just go in and not cause any additional damage. That's a sad place to be in, where it's like, just can we get a dog mayor? In Northern California, there's this cute little town. I want to say it's Idlewild or something. They have a dog mayor. Mayor's the dog. Just do that. It would be better. LA and its 15 million people would flourish, because you're not having someone sitting in that seat causing so much harm and so much trouble. So I love elections. That's my work experience. I have 2 decades of media and messaging in behind the scenes in elections. So I can't wait. And I've loved seeing everyone rush to endorse Spencer Pratt right away. Probably the fastest I've ever seen people run to endorse someone. He's got a ton of support, and I think that he's got a great shot at actually winning the seat. So we'll see. Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris just bought a nice little piece of land over there in your former neighborhood. Did you help her? Were you her agent? Don't lie, Liz.
You know what? It's just because I like money and transactions.
$8 million.
$8 million on Point Doom. The home is on Grasswood. So Grasswood does not have access to the private beach of Little Doom.
What will she do?
I just honestly, bad decision on her part, but maybe a good decision, because you know what? Believe it or not, Malibu, very red. The people who live in Malibu full time, very conservative.
I actually lived in Malibu for 4.5 years. I always sing its praises. People have certain conceptions about it because celebrities live there, or they think it's some, spoiled beach town. It is one of the most fabulous places. I say this all the time. Some of the most tremendous people live there. It's a great community. I'm sure they're just thrilled with this. And you know what we got in our community in the valley just north of us? We got the Bidens. And so they're off to retirement. You know, they've served their country so valiantly and with so much transparency and just done the best they can do. Really selfless there. Definitely didn't take any more money than they should have. Absolutely not. And we've got the $8 million mansion in Malibu and the, $10-12 million property in the San Ynez Valley here. So no one needs to, I know everyone is so worried about where Kamala is going to land. Honestly, Liz, I'm just taking a moment to thank God that she's not trying to run for governor, although that would have been probably a help to the Republican candidates also. So I think retirement's probably the best path for Kamala Harris at this point.
I just find it really funny that, Kamala Harris really calls herself a woman of, the people, and she really cares about minorities and all that. She's bought a house in Malibu. It's like the whitest place ever in California. So you hear all of these people who are such advocates for the minority communities. Perfect example, the BLM women. Where did they buy their homes?
Yeah.
Topanga, which actually may be whiter than Malibu.
Yeah.
It's definitely crunchier. So it seems as though they don't practice what they preach, and that should really tell you a lot. At least Trump, he's honest about who he is 100% of the time.
Sure. I don't know if you've been over to the Oval anytime recently, but there is so much gold flourish after gold flourish after gold frame after gold lampstand. It almost hurts the eyes, but you're exactly right. He is who he is, and he doesn't apologize for it. Kamala Harris did a lot of damage in this state when she was here, and we're still working our way through that. In fact, legislation just passed that will take effect this year in 2026 to undo some of the damage that she tried to cause here and did cause. She was trying to jail parents for their kids' truancy, regardless of the circumstances or the issues. And of course, our criminal justice system and our prison system here was tremendously negatively affected by her policies and the work that she did here. So I'm not sure she's going to be receiving the warm welcome that she might think that she would, but maybe she'll just, stay home, and I'm sure it's lovely. So good to see that.
California, when it comes to crime and stuff, is very confusing to me because here you had Kamala Harris, who imprisoned people for literally anything, smoking weed, whatever. At the same time, you can go into Target and steal up to $900 worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And people, you can't do anything about it. If someone goes into your store, you can't really do anything. Sorry. And I have been told, I have a friend of mine who works at, or did work at the Nordstrom's at the Topanga Mall. And that Nordstrom's is constantly getting burglarized. And the heads of or the managers would tell them, the employees, you cannot do anything. You have to just let them steal. And people would come in with bear spray, ruin everything. And the employees had to clean up after the fact.
Wow. With no hazard pay.
Nothing. No.
That's outrageous. But I mean, we see it. And I think this is probably shocking to people who don't live here, but we see it all the time. And as you approach that mall, which is a beautiful, very high-end, every high-end store is there. You pass all the tent cities on your way there. It's a real odd, kind of end of the world looking dichotomy of people living at the lowest to people living the high life, right? All in the same intersectionality of existence. So yeah, it's amazing. I also think that the state is trying to put forward policies and legislation that sounds good, but that just nothing will happen. I want to talk quickly while I've got you too. You're of Jewish faith practicing, and we are still working through some issues, not just in the state and not just in this country, but really globally with what's happening in Israel, with anti-Semitism. Other things have, of course, come front of mind, and issues that we are dealing with on an international scale. But where do you think things stand? And one of those new California laws that I just mentioned is allegedly going to create these in-school departments to address things like racism. But they also say it's going to address religious discrimination and anti-Semitism. I don't want to be too skeptical here, but I had a little chuckle to myself when when I read that. Do you think that's going to happen here in the state of California? Where do you think things stand with the way that people in general are viewing the Jewish people and Israel and anti-Semitism?
Well, we've never really been very popular. I'm not gonna lie. We've never been the most popular people on the planet. I think what's really heartbreaking is that for the most part, we've always seen a strong alliance between conservatives and Jewish people. And I've felt like I've had a place being a conservative and being Jewish, but now seeing people on, which I'm going to just call the woke right, who are very anti-Semitic, who are listening to people like Candace Owens, who blame the Jewish people for everything.
Yeah.
It's like, there are 15 million of us. We are not responsible for everyone's problems. And not to say, I do believe, and this may sound like complete conspiracy theorist person over here, I do believe that there are elites that have a say and control over certain things. Whether or not they're Jewish has nothing to do with anything. And I don't think that blaming Israel, because a lot of what gets brought up is we give so much money to Israel. Israel needs to spend 90% of that money in the United States. It's not like we're just giving Israel money for nothing. They need to spend it in the United States. So that is a huge misconception. And people don't seem to want to hear that. They always want to have somebody to blame, and it's just easy to blame us. And we've been the scapegoat for thousands of years, and we're kind of used to it by now. And it is heartbreaking to see that a lot of my Jewish friends, we are afraid to walk around with our Stars of David. We're afraid to be openly Jewish. I, for one, another cultural shock, moving to Texas. I grew up in Beverly Hills with surrounded by Jewish people my entire life. I moved to Dallas, where it's very Christian. There is a Jewish community, but obviously not as large. And meeting people that say, oh yeah, I would never date a Jewish person. And I'm like, wow, I've never heard that before. Yeah. That's so strange. So I think the rise in anti-Semitism, I sadly don't see it slowing down anytime soon. But unlike World War II, we are afraid in certain ways, but we are no longer silent. And we saw what happened once, and we know that it could happen again, and we'll never forget that. So you have a lot of Jewish influencers such as Lizzie Savetsky, Ari Ackman, Zach Fox, so many that I admire so much, who speak out against anti-Semitism, who expose it, and who go around educating people. I think Zach Fox does an amazing job with his man on the street interviews, and he really does educate people. And I think we need to be doing more of that as a community, and just sticking together and make more Jewish babies. Let's just do what they don't want us to do.
That sounds adorable. Please do that. That sounds amazing. I hear what you're saying, and I think that we just internationally, every person on God's green earth needs to find a way to have a more balanced understanding of who's to blame for anything. Yeah. We sort of approach things like all or nothing. We love finding the scapegoat. We love finding someone or something to blame. And it just became popular these last few years to blame Israel for everything. And when you look at it in the context of, who takes responsibility for things, or if you understand the history and the nuances of the inner workings of all of this faith that's existed since the beginning of time, and as a Christian, how to view Israel as God's chosen nation and God's chosen people, and understanding that relationship, and I think that we've gotten a far away from this in understanding, Israel isn't to blame for everything. Israel's not all bad. It's not all good. It's not perfect. Donald Trump is not all bad or all good. We cannot blame him for everything or think every single thing that he does is fantastic. Gavin Newsom, help me out on this one. Is he all bad? Has he done something good? Is there anything redeeming that he has done?
He's keeping hair gel in business.
There you go.
So,
no notes.
I hate to say this, he's not bad looking. God.
I think the personality really influences the way that he looks.
Yeah.
Some people's inside bubbles forth a little bit more than others.
Yeah.
Has he done any good for the state? I mean, in all honesty, we can't set him on fire too badly here, can we? I don't know. I think I have been waiting all these years for someone to make an accurate and reasonable defense of his job as governor. What do you think?
God, you know what? I think that the bad really outweighs the good, and I'm trying to figure out what the good is here. He must have done one thing right? There's no way he's all bad.
We're gonna have to do another episode. We're gonna have to think about this for a little bit.
ChatGPT.
What has he done that's been a positive contribution to the state of California? Final thoughts. Since this is Newsom Nonsense, we've talked about a whole lot of nonsense. Give me your favorite, or let's call it least favorite, piece of nonsense from Gavin Newsom.
Well, okay, I guess most recently, the fact that he said to Trump, "Oh, you said you were going to help us out. We need $40 billion." And I'm like, well, buddy, between the $24 billion on the homeless and the over $20 billion that you spent on a high-speed railway, there's your $40 billion. Yeah. Stop blaming Trump for everything. So I feel like that's definitely something. And then what was he doing yesterday at Davos? Like, why was he there?
What an embarrassment. What an embarrassment.
The photo with Alex Soros. You know what, now that when you start mentioning certain things, everything else just.
Absolutely. Well said. I love it. If you come back out to LA for a Spencer Pratt rally or event, hit me up and I'll go with you. This has been such a fun and interesting conversation with you, Liz. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope to have you back on the show too, and we'll see where we're at maybe in several months from here and from this conversation. But thank you so much for coming on Politically Basic's special series, Newsom Nonsense, to break down all the nonsense with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I'm always happy to come.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Politically Basic. We are committed to breaking down the basics so that you get to decide. Be sure to check us out at politicallybasic.com and follow us at Politically Basic so you don't miss an episode. And we will see you next time.